Welcome back, everyone. Well, I feel like I can share the encounter out of Kentucky that I've been itching to share for days now. This one hits close to home for me as I was born in Clay County, Kentucky. Not to mention, this is a bone-chilling tale in itself. I'm excited for this one, so I'm just gonna jump right in. Grab a drink, lock your doors and windows, hit the lights, and let's get started. Date, November 2003, Clay County, Kentucky. Just call me Jack. I come from a long line of hard, stubborn men who've worked these hills since my great-great-grandfather came over from the Carolinas. My family settled here in Clay County years ago, carving out a life in the rugged landscapes of eastern Kentucky. My dad ran a small sawmill, a rough place that smelled like oak and motor oil. And as soon as I was old enough to work, I joined him, hauling timber from the Daniel Boone. Life wasn't easy, but it was honest, and we were proud of what we had. I remember the night I thought I was going to die, as if it happened yesterday. I'd gone out to retrieve some hunting traps my dad and I had set pretty deep in the woods. We trapped coyote, bobcat, beaver. We sold the pelts, but we did it mostly for the love of it. Not being cruel to all you animal lovers out there, there has to be some form of population control. These animals can do a lot of harm to the environment and cause people a lot of problems. Anyway, when I got out there, the sun had already dropped behind the ridge, and with no moon, I was walking in near pitch black darkness. The only light I had was from a worn-out flashlight and the faint glow of my old Nokia phone. The woods were silent, more so than usual, and a strange tension was hanging around me, like something was watching me while I was making my way through the trees. After finding the first trap empty, I moved on to the next, which was set by an old dried-out creek bed. I crouched to check it, and that's when I heard something snap behind me. Not just a twig or a small stick. It was like a branch had been ripped clean off of a tree. I turned around and I saw nothing, but my instincts are pretty sharp, and I knew something was watching me now, with not a doubt in my mind. I was ready to just ignore it. Most animals out here are afraid of human presence and disappear at any sign or scent of people. When all of a sudden I noticed that the smell around me had changed. The woods was thick with a rancid, rotting stench. It was like wet fur and decay mixed together. I pushed it aside, ignored my nerves, and kept moving, telling myself it was probably a dead animal, maybe a dog or coyote nearby. Just as I started moving again, there was obvious movement. It wasn't even trying to be stealthy. Across the creek bed, maybe 50 yards away, something was crouched low, partly hidden behind a tree. It was huge and hunched over. It was nearly my height, and when it moved, I could see the outline of a long dog-like snout. The eyes is what got me. The eye shine in the light from my flashlight was an unnatural red, soul-piercing red like the devil himself. By this time, I was concerned, and I knew I was in a bad predicament. Before I had a chance to even react, it began to growl at me. It was a deep sound that vibrated through the ground beneath my feet. I took a step back and its head moved, following my every movement. I knew damn well better than to try and run, unless I had no other options. And as to not ruin any animal pelts out here, I only had a single shot .22 rifle. By the size of the animal I was looking at, that would be like throwing rocks at it. I could see its limbs. It was too dark to see any color of the fur or any fine details, but it had very long, skinny limbs. And its front half of its body was raised, like its back legs were a lot shorter than the front. Without thinking, I dropped the trap, unshouldered the rifle, and started backing up. Then it did something that I will never forget, until the day they put me in the ground. It stood up on its hind legs, towering over everything around it, including me. It had to be every bit of 9 or 10 feet tall. I knew at that point running was my only chance. This was a huge predatory animal of some sort, and I was now on the menu. I ran blindly through the trees, branches smacking me in the face. I didn't want to make a mistake and fall or trip, so I didn't look back. But I could hear it. Its footsteps were incredibly fast, and every time I would quickly glance over my shoulder, I could see flashes of those red eyes. They got closer each time I looked. In a fit of being in survival mode, I thought of the only place I could hide. There was an old abandoned cabin up ahead that used to belong to my great uncle. I dove inside and shut the door, bracing it with whatever I could find. There was barely any light, just the dim glow from my phone. It was quiet for a few seconds, and then the smell hit me again, stronger this time, filling the entire cabin. It was still out there. The smell made me gag. It started clawing at the walls. It sounded like someone was dragging nails along the wood outside the cabin. I was trying to calm my breathing so it wouldn't hear me, clenching my fist. Every muscle was tight. The scratching stopped for a minute, and I thought maybe it was gone. But then, there was a thump on the roof, and I knew it had jumped up there. The wood creaked and moaned as it moved across, and I could feel the wood wanting to give way to its weight with every step. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Suddenly there was a loud crash from over my head, and pieces of rotten wood and dust fell down on top of me. I quickly realized that it was trying to break through the roof. Its claws were tearing at the wood, ripping apart the beams one by one, and with each hit, I could see more of its outline. Thick fur was matted, and those red eyes were frantically scanning the darkness to find me. I scrambled for the only thing I had, the rifle, but I had a feeling it was useless. But it was at least something. The ripping and tearing sounds got louder, more frenzied, and I could see its snout poking through, sniffing, searching. It let out another growl that told me I was going to die tonight, and I realized at that moment that it was enjoying this. It was playing with me. I raised and pointed the rifle right at its head, and it quickly recoiled and pulled back out of the hole it had torn the roof before I could make the shot. Then, in a bizarre moment of clarity, I remembered something my dad told me years ago. He said, if you're ever in danger in the woods, make yourself look big. I knew it wouldn't work, but desperation took over. I stood up, banging on the walls and shouting as loud as I could, hoping somehow, by some miracle, that it would think I was more of a threat than I was. For a second, everything went quiet. The scratching stopped, and I could hear it moving off the roof, dropping back to the ground. I held my breath, hoping it was leaving. But then it let out a howl, the most soul-piercing sound I've ever heard. It wasn't leaving. It was done playing. It was pissed. I could hear it circling the cabin like it was waiting for me to make a move or run out the door to escape. Hours passed, or it may have just been minutes. Time lost all meaning. Eventually, I heard something else, the soft crunch of tires on gravel. My dad's truck. I shot through the wall toward the sounds, and I threw open the door, screaming for my dad. By the time I reached the truck, the thing was gone, but the smell still lingered in the air. I told my dad what happened, and though he didn't say much, I saw the look on his face, fear and disbelief. He never doubted me, not even once, and that was the scariest part. That night, as we sat in the truck in silence, he handed me his old .45, something he'd never done before. And he said, "Son, some things out here aren't meant to be seen, and they sure ain't meant to be talked about. Keep this quiet. Trust me." In the days after, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that my granddad knew something about what I'd seen. When I was a kid, he'd sometimes tell stories, usually late at night after a few too many drinks. He would talk about a creature he and his old buddies called the walking wolf. They'd say it came from the deep woods, the places where the trees seemed older, like they were holding secrets they'd never share. They claimed this creature was no ordinary animal, more like a monster, something not out of our world, and it moved on two legs like a man, but had the head and body of a wolf. I'd always thought those were just stories. Every place has its campfire tales. I even remember laughing about it, thinking he was just pulling my leg. But now, I know better. I'd seen it for myself, and I knew the legends were true. I hear most folks call it Dogman, and I finally understood why no one ever dared go looking for it. In the months that followed, I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, swearing I could still hear the scratching and smell that awful reek of rotting flesh. I thought about leaving Kentucky altogether just to get away from it, but something in me, maybe just being stubborn, wouldn't let it go. I couldn't stand the idea of that thing running free, terrorizing people while I did nothing. So now, every chance I get, I go back out to those woods. I take my dad's old .45 loaded and ready. I also have a 12 gauge loaded with slugs, and I retrace my steps, hoping to find any sign of it. Some folks would probably call me crazy for going back out there, but it doesn't matter. That thing tried to break me, tried to terrify me into staying away, and I'll be damned if I'll let it think that it won. I want answers, and more than that, I want to find it. The walking wolf, Dogman, whatever people want to call it. I want to face it again, only this time on my terms. And if I get the chance, I'm going to put it down once and for all. I will get answers for all of us, especially the ones who are not able to tell their tales. Jack. Wow, this one was intense, y'all. First off, I've emailed him begging him not to hunt this thing. But I guess he's determined to do so. Jack, my friend, I can't talk you out of anything. You're a grown man. So the best I can do now is pray for you and tell you to be as safe as you can be, and if you would stay in touch so I know you're okay. This is beyond a terrible idea, my friend. But to be honest, I'm not one to judge or preach because I do a lot of stupid stuff out here in these woods myself. I know how you feel, man, but proof isn't worth your life. Just be safe and pray. That's my advice. Well, guys, that's the encounter. I haven't heard from him since he sent this. That's the only email I've received. I hope he's okay and that I hear back from him soon. I want to thank you, Jack, for sending this for all of us to hear. It was an insane tale, brother. Everyone be sure and like and subscribe to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. I'm working on getting some better recording equipment, hopefully soon. I'm feeling a lot better today as well. Thank you guys for all your well wishes and prayers. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, my friends, watch over your loved ones, keep your head on a swivel, and as always, good night.